Yes.
Shush, darling, I'm just...
Cool. Yeah. Cool. We are recording now.
I think the situation you've either got people who are working and being paid as normal. You've got people you've put in some unpaid capacity, but obviously you need to look at how you've agreed that with them. You might have people who you've decided to furlough, and the important bit is that you get their consent to do that, because that is an employment contract change. And whilst that may not be an issue for you now, what we don't want is employment tribunal claims in 3 months' time. You may have people that are being made redundant, or you may have people that you're reducing hours on. So there's lots of different combinations that you might be looking at the moment.
Yeah. So if I kick off with the first question, you said about the 0 hours contract guys. How do we calculate the pay for those guys? Because obviously, you know, if they're on 0 hours, we could actually give them no hours at all for April. And that would be legally okay as far as our contracts are concerned, but obviously unfair to them if they have been working a number of hours for us in the past. So what's your recommendation there?
Okay, well, this is an interesting one. From our perspective, 0 hours workers would have always been out of this because they're not employees, but the document that came out last night says very categorically that they are included. The guidance we have says if employees have been employed or engaged, so that could be they weren't necessarily working, but they had a contract in place, for 12-month period or more prior to the claim that you're making, they should receive either the higher of the same month's earnings for the previous year or the average monthly earnings for the 2019-2020 tax year. If they've been employed for less than a year, you can claim for an average of their monthly earnings since they started work.
So the average, so we pretty much take the period that they've been working and average that out over, and then that becomes their monthly.
And hopefully this is the services that your payroll provision should be able to provide for you.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, you know, that when I read that, it seems reasonably fair way of calculating it if for that side of things. So cool. So has anybody got any questions that they want to ask? I'll certainly the ones that have come up. So Paul sort of said, can one be furloughed in more than one business?
Okay. So I think I saw an interesting question the other day. So obviously it depends on whether they're on 0 hours or a permanent contract with set hours. If they're on the latter, so they've got set hours, you can obviously furlough them within your business. I think the thing, as long as you do your audit trail properly, the area of risk that may come up, but I don't think it's a risk for you, it might be for the individual, is if they have a second job and then work additional hours in the hours that you are employing them to work in, and hence they're making a double claim, and that will show up through PAYE.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think it's your issue, but it's one just to be mindful of, to make your employees aware that you know, for instance, they've got a delivery as a second job and they're out kind of getting extra hours when they normally would be working for you. HMRC won't like that, because obviously effectively they're being paid twice for the same hours.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, that is the if you furlough them and they get a full-time job in the time you're working, you know, during the hours they should be working with you, you've got to stipulate they shouldn't be working for anybody else.
Yeah, and your responsibility is
had two part-time jobs alongside, then you'd be okay with that one. So so it says furlough can be backdated to 1st of March. How can it be applied retrospectively? We need a crystal ball to stop them working then. I think from my take on that is this was to catch those people that made people redundant in the past, and you can in effect take them back on, avoid the redundancy if it was done between 1st of March and today, and then in effect have furloughed them from that date. Is that your taking on it, Steph?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I had a question today, for instance, that somebody run a nursery and they had an employee who'd resigned, and she actually left them on the 20th of March. And when we looked at it, we said, well, she's resigned, she hasn't been made redundant. Her new employer wouldn't furlough her because she didn't meet the date criteria, and she wanted to be furloughed by her old employer. And we were like, well, actually, P45 has been issued. So from that perspective, she's just in a vulnerable position. It's no responsibility of the employer.
Yeah, yeah. We've had a similar situation. One client that they were due to finish on the actually today was their last day working for us. They were set up to go to a new job on Monday, and obviously, you know, the new employer is now saying, well, we don't want you to start, and they're a bit stuck, and they've come back to us and said, would we furlough them? And I said, look, that's got to be down to you as a personal decision whether you've got that loyalty to that client. You've got no obligation to do that, I'm assuming, because they've actually handed their notice in. There are going to be some unfortunate people that are going to suffer from this. You know, they can't come up with a scheme that actually keeps everybody happy. So, so I think that was the main reason why they backdated it to the 1st of March. Is there a quick way to calculate the 80% to allow for NIs for NIers and pension contribution so that you are close to break even as possible to match the grant from HMRC? Oh, blimey. Is there a quick way to calculate it?
I think some accountants have calculation tools on their websites.
Yeah.
Certainly you could have a look around. I can think of a couple which have got calculation tools, so you could probably have a go, but certainly some of your payroll departments should be able to model that for you.
Yeah, so I think if you can put those on the WhatsApp group, if there are some quick calculation things, yeah, because a lot of people it's different. I think most payroll systems do the NI calculation, the pension calculation anyway. My view would be to run the payroll, yeah, but don't obviously send it. So do a couple of options of running it, see what it comes up with, put that in your cash flow, and do a bit of what if analysis actually with your systems. That's what they're all geared up to do. We used to do that in the old days, and I'm sure it's more sophisticated these days. So we'll probably get you around that one. We took on a member of staff. She started on the 16th of March. We can't furlough her, but can she get anything from her previous employer? I think you probably just answered that one, Steph, didn't you? That she can go. I mean, if she's actually started with you, then really she can't. You know, she's done.
Yeah,
she's done 10 days. You know, imagine if it was your member of staff and she'd done 10 days somewhere else and came back saying, you know, can I have furlough now? It's, you know, you are a bit stuck. There is a moral issue with this. I know I've been talking to a few clients, talking them through, you know, what we can do. But again, go back to furlough is a replacement for redundancy. So, you know, if you were to make one person redundant over another person, would you actually do a long-time employee, make them redundant over somebody who's newly started? What would your take on that be, Steph?
I think the important thing is just not to make any kind of quick decisions. The bit that worries me about this whole process, the bit that could be a real concern for employers, is 3-4 months down the line whereby you've made some decisions and actually people come back with discrimination claims.
Yeah.
Because a furlough, whilst obviously a new term we'd never even heard of before Friday, is a contractual change. So you do need to get an employee's agreement to make that contractual change. Now, hopefully they're going to agree to it because the alternative may be redundancy. So it's in their interest to do it. But if you're going to be certainly furloughing certain individuals within your organisation, then you need to be aware that you need to have a decision tree or something, a selection criteria as to why you select some individuals over others. And the risk always with a first in, last out kind of, or last in, first out kind of principle, is that typically those last into your organisation tend to be younger, and you can get something like what's called an indirect age discrimination claim. So it's a bit of a long shot, but the more transparency you have, in the same way that you did redundancy, if you've got 20 people and you're going to furlough all bar 6, there needs to be some mechanism by which you can demonstrate clearly and fairly why you've selected the individuals to be furloughed.
Yeah, and I'm saying to everybody, really have an open discussion with your teams. It's harder when you've got bigger teams, and probably harder now because a lot of people are remote. You can't just get them into to one meeting room, but there's no reason why you couldn't Zoom and talk to them about it. The more they're aware of why you're doing things and what's happening, I think you'll lessen the impact of this if something happens going down the line. But it's very hard to see anybody sort of complaining that they're going to be off and earning £2,500 for sitting on their bum. So
And I think, you know, the lesson I've, it sounds awful, doesn't it, for 25 years of making people redundant, the one thing that people do is they remember how they're treated. You know,
Yeah.
you might need these individuals again in the future, and they're scared, they don't know what to do. I know you're worrying about your businesses and keeping them afloat, but these are individuals. And you know, if you talk to people and you're honest and you say you don't know, most people will actually respect you for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is a lot of that. It's the people that are treating in a you know, being treated badly in this and just being told without understanding what's going on are the ones that are more likely to come back and bite you in the arse later on. So,
Yeah, and certainly, you know, from experiences when we've had recessions before, what tends to happen is if lots of people get made redundant, we have no tribunal fees anymore. People often will have a go at kind of popping in a tribunal claim because they've got nothing to lose. They, you know, might be struggling for cash, and it's certainly a, well, let's have a pop and see what we get back.
cool. I've just lost my things here. Is that one there? What about if people want to volunteer for the NHS during furlough?
Yeah, we had clarity on that one last night specifically. Good. So it's one of the things that specifically mentioned that a furloughed employee can take part in volunteering work or training, so long as it does not provide services or generate revenue for or on behalf of your business. So yeah, certainly if somebody's going to go off and volunteer for the NHS and they're furloughed with you, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, yeah, that was my take on that as well. So yeah, they can, and they should do, and I think it'd be encouraged to do that. You know, it's you know, if they are, you know, at home, then get them being active. Do his business have to pay the employee the missing 20% if we don't have layoff or short working in our contracts?
No, absolutely. So the vast majority of people will not have a short-term layoff provision in their contracts of employment. They really weren't particularly useful because you had to, unless you had them, you'd have to consult anyway. So assuming you don't have them in their contract, then you just need to get people's consent to furlough. There is no commitment to pay the extra 20%, but obviously, again, most people are going to consent because the option or the alternative would be to be made redundant.
Yeah, and I'm going to sort of people, you know, because I've had a few that, you know, they do have some cash reserves, yeah, and they want to, you know, they've got a very close relationship with their team, and we're sort of talking about should we pay this, and I'm sort of getting to really look at that. That at the moment everybody's potentially in that situation where if they were furloughed and got 80%, they would be okay. If you keep that 20% up your sleeve, you know, or the balance, you know, and say, look, if we get through this after 3-6 months, you know, and we've got, you know, we're in a good place, then there's nothing stopping you being able to pay that back to them and topping it back up as a contribution, as a thank you for being for working with us. But I certainly wouldn't verbalise that to any team member at this stage, but I would be, you know, keeping that sort of to one side if I could, in order to, you know, to say thank you later down the line. You know, because all of this is, the beauty with all of this is going through the payroll system anyway, so all the tax and national insurance will be paid, so the government will be, you know, more than happy if you pay them more from that. I had to close my shop as soon as the government announced the closure on the 24th of March. My payroll had already been run by the accountant and I was paid as normal my staff until the end of the month. They need to be furloughed for 3 weeks minimum. Does that mean if we're able to reopen in 3 weeks, I cannot claim as there is an overlap?
This is a guesstimate. I think there will be a retrospective ability within this. The reason they've set it up on the 1st of March on exactly that basis is because people would have been isolating and, you know, getting sick, and people would have been shutting straight away. I think you will be able to make an adjustment retrospectively. I can't promise it, but it makes logical sense that that's the scheme they'll be working on the basis.
Yeah.
Particularly, you know, they're going to be rushing to make sure that this portal is probably ready for most people's payroll in April.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think you know, they'll open the portal. You'll put the claims through. You'll obviously need to show the difference between the hours that they worked and then the in effect the furloughed hours. I mean if they've if we'd closed down, I mean I'm not sure. That was from Alan. Can you unmute yourself, Alan? If you push the space bar down, you should be able to talk. Not sure if you can. So, but I think it's that whether if I'd said, look, we're closing down before the furlough rules came out, how would I go about asking the team then to go on furlough? Would I just have to go through the same process, even though I've closed the shop and in effect they've all been laid off?
So that's one of the challenges. The new guidance says very specifically, if you've already reduced people's hours or shut in advance, so hence got a contractual change with them, then you can't furlough them. So if you've been really quick off the mark and done something and you've got that consent, the important thing is just to check your documentation. So what have they agreed to? And depending on there, then you can also make a latter decision. Yeah,
I think it's really, you've got to look at each case, look at the audit trail, see what it is. And again, get some expert advice on that, because there will be lots of these little things that are very specific, and all the nuances need to be looked at in total. So
and I guess our biggest concern is people are going to get through this, which is great, and then what you don't want to be done is hit again in 3-4 months time with a claim that's going to kind of just really hit your cash reserve.
Yeah. Okay. And for Matt. Starter on the 16th of March, but the contract was agreed in February. No difference, is it? Doesn't matter when.
No, because obviously HMRC are going to work on the basis of their payroll submissions via PAYE and RTI.
I mean, there is that whole thing that the move to RTI last year. How they would do this if they hadn't moved to RTI, God only knows. It would have been. But the fact they've got the RTI, they've got the audit trail. They've checked somebody's national insurance number. And all the information will be there. So Simon says, are we able to reduce hours and mix with the remainder on furlough?
No, sorry, it's an all or nothing.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is we had some clients who were really quick off the mark and got into talking about reducing hours with their employees and gave consent for doing that, and then obviously we had the news at 5 o'clock last week about this new scheme. What the guidance says is if you have already agreed unpaid leave periods or you've reduced hours, then you are not able to furlough.
So there is that, if you've done that and that's agreed. I mean, let's assume we're not dealing with hundreds of people here, with trade unions and stuff like that. If we've got 2 or 3 people that we've just said, look, we can't pay you, we've got to lay you off. If we've made them redundant, then we can go back, can't we?
Yes, you can.
And we can basically rehire them. So if we've laid them off, can we not go back and in effect rehire them and then furlough them?
Don't quote me on this, and this is kind of wouldn't cover my professional indemnity, but I think the logical thing is if you've reduced their hours, you increase their hours again, and then you furlough them.
Yeah.
What checks and balances are going to be in after this, I don't know, but that logically makes sense. The best thing to do.
So if you've laid them off, rehire them, and then furlough them from the day you rehired them. So there'll be a bit of working out, I think, you've got to do to get the flow of that, but hopefully it's not happened. We're only talking a week or 2 weeks here, so we should be able to work it through. I think that's a good thing to come up with. So coming back to this, the mix of some people on furlough, some people not on furlough. This 3-week period, sort of suggested that. If let's say I've got 10 people and I furlough 5 and I keep 5, and then after a week, the 5 that I've kept working go sick, I can bring the 5 that are on furlough off furlough.
Absolutely.
Replace those people. Now, if that happens within that 3-week period, what would happen in that case?
We don't specifically know, but it would suggest that you just then wouldn't be able to furlough those people because you're kind of undermining that 3-week period.
So what options do you think we would have then? Would they would, because they wouldn't have worked, in effect we'd probably have to pay them for that period.
Yeah.
Could we go back and ask them to sort of treat it as holiday?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not, the important thing in the employment law is that you just have to demonstrate as an employer that you have been reasonable. It's not like criminal law. You have to be reasonable as the employer, and wherever you can get consent for things, it helps, as long as they're not forced consent. And consent will always agree to a contractual change, will take precedence over everything. If you don't get consent, then there are mechanics by which you can do things. And the important bit, particularly if anybody's got 20 or more people, come and talk to us, because you're still bound by, and I noticed it was in the guidance that came out yesterday, you will still be bound by what's called collective consultation, even to furlough. So that's the provisions that you would normally do if you're going to make somebody redundant. They're going to be exactly the same in this situation.
Yeah. So would it make sense then, if I am thinking of furloughing people, to actually in that change of contract to put, while you're on furlough, if at any time you are asked to come back to cover sick leave, or the business does get an order in that we need to work, that you will come back, and any time under the 3 weeks then will be treated as holiday.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be reasonable. If they agree to it, they agree to it. So it's that's the battle.
Yeah. So it needs to be some form of provision in there to cover you if you do envisage them potentially coming back in that 3 week period. Have something in that writing with them that will cover that. If you think that we're going to be closed for a month, then it's not an issue. And if we do the 3 weeks furlough and they come back for a week, can we furlough them again after that?
Well, that we don't have any sight of yet. I think probably, my estimation is they did the 3 week minimum just because that's the period of the shutdown that we're having.
Yeah.
So they were kind of covering that, and I think it's predominantly aimed at retail, cafes, social events, whereby they had a forced closure. So I'm thinking that's what the 3 week period was for. We think so. We think you could come back to work, and as long as you're then furloughed for another 3 weeks. We just don't know, and I anticipate there'll be more kind of guidance coming out on that.
Yeah, because obviously there is that issue. We have the 3 weeks. They lift the ban. We bring them back to work, and then it all hits off again.
Yeah.
But so my take was it's three weeks in effect a 4 week period.
Yes.
So so it's got to be in that sort of length of time there. So cool. Okay. So can you please give us the latest view on taking people off furlough after 3 weeks? Okay, I think that's what I've just, thank you very much, Sandy. So we had just covered that one. So any other points on furlough? If anybody wants to unmute themselves, you just push the space bar. You can actually speak rather than type if that's easier. Or there is a wave hands button somewhere on the screen as well.
I have a question. It's Matt here.
Okay, Matt.
Is it my understanding that furlough can't be applied, as you said, it's all or nothing. It can't be applied on a part-time sort of basis, so reducing 5 days to 3 days a week, for example. And as a consequence, I'm assuming it cannot be applied to a company director, because they would be in then derogation of their duties as a company director.
So we've got no specific clarity on this, but I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I think, as you're a company director, your duties of fidelity, fiduciary, all the other bits and pieces that are there are not going away. So we think it unlikely, but we don't categorically know.
Yeah, I mean, the normal rule is directors are employees of the company. There's no in legal rights. There's nothing else there. So let's say you had 5 directors. And let's say it was the sales director and there's no sales at all and you can't see any sales coming in. I wouldn't have thought there's a problem with furloughing the sales director.
Well, actually, it's an interesting point there, isn't there? If the fiduciary duties of a director have nothing to do with the employment contracts, they're set out elsewhere in law. So you're at liberty to carry on fulfilling your fiduciary duties as a director, which could be all sorts of things like making sure there's cash in the bank or those sorts of things without that being specified in an employment contract. It's just a thought.
No, I mean, I'm a non-exec director for a charity. It's exactly the same. So it's in a non-paid capacity. My fiduciary duties will carry on. They're not going to follow me, but I'm still there. I'm still required to provide.
That's right, because they persist after you've long left the company. You've still got responsibilities in relation to the period in which you were a director. So, just a thought. It could be ways of doing some things without breaking the furlough rules, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think for most of us that are running our businesses, it's, you know, in a way, you know, I did have one client say, well, that's brilliant, I'll furlough myself, and all the team can actually just run the business for a month, and I'll stay at home and they can do it. And I thought, yeah, but you're not going to leave the business at all, are you? You're going to keep going back in. So you've only got to answer one email or take one phone call, and it's gone. So I think you'd have to have a pretty strong case to argue that the senior director of the business was going to furlough himself.
Kevin, can I just jump in there?
Yeah, Claire.
Yeah, Mimi Ronald sent me this just a couple of minutes ago. Martin Lewis has put something out on, I think it's Facebook, and says, I've had it confirmed that self-employed limited company directors can be furloughed as employees on their PAYE element. Technically, they can't then work, yet directors of limited companies do have some ongoing legal duties and paperwork to do. Yet if you did that, no one would know, and I'm hearing that the state would not be looking to prosecute if the work was limited to this. So this was just literally 10 minutes ago.
Right.
So
I saw it about an hour ago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I think that reinforces it that you can. Can you just read that last bit again about the bit of paperwork?
It said, technically they can't then work, yet directors of limited companies do have some ongoing legal duties and paperwork to do. Yet if you did that, no one would know, and I'm hearing that the state would not be looking to prosecute if the work is limited to this.
Right. So that was the sort of the bit with other furloughed members of the team. If they were furloughed and they did a tiny bit of paperwork and something like that, you know, the letter of the law says no, they can provide no service or, you know, improvement of revenues of the business. That would suggest that, you know, they're not looking to be draconian on this. If they did the odd email or did the odd a bit of work here, or you phone them up and said, can you tell me how to enter into this box here, that wouldn't be a problem. Would you agree with that, Steph?
I don't know. It's a grey one. I'd love to be able to give everybody an answer black or white and confirm it. Certainly, it's one of those things that.
Well, Martin Lewis said it, so it must be true.
I know. I'm hearing he's taking a bit of a bashing at the moment. I mean, you know, worst case scenario, you're talking about defrauding HMRC.
Yeah.
Other end of the spectrum, you know, it's about being pragmatic, isn't it? We don't know. It's one of those things. You know, I certainly want up some people I might want to take on, but HMRC is not one of them. I think you need to come to a decision that sits with you ethically and morally around what's appropriate.
I think you've got to lead with that. You know, the ethics and the morals of it. You know, but you know, if it meant that, you know, you phone somebody up and talk to them about work, you know, then I can't see there'll be a problem with that. And to be honest, if there's no paper trail, then yeah, you know, they can only do this through audit. So you know, you just got to be very careful of leaving yourself open to it. So, cool.
Kevin,
yeah.
Kevin, it's Chris.
Hi, Chris.
We had some interesting guidance this morning from the FSB, so I'd suggest that you have a look on their website. We've been told that furloughed company directors, as in single directors of companies, can be furloughed, and their statutory duties can be undertaken while they are furloughed.
Yeah.
Apparently that has been agreed by Revenue and Customs.
Right. So that's single directors.
Single company directors.
Yeah.
And I think the carrying out your company director duties makes sense, because that would be the equivalent of a trustee for a charity, you know, in an unpaid capacity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bit of logic around it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think that they are, you know, they're taking a reasonably pragmatic approach to this. I think you know, because there's a lot of business out there that they're a one-man band, you know, limited company, and they might say, actually, I am the company and therefore I'm going to shut down, and you know, and might be one or two people, everyone's going to be furloughed, and I'm going to be one of those people. And if that business in effect cease trades for a month, then that it will be okay for that. I think the problem I had was where the team continued to work and the director then furloughs himself. So the business continues to run and the director says, no, I'm off. I think I'd say you've got a bit of an issue with that one. Mainly because why you'd want to let the guys run it for you in these times of crisis. So cool. So I believe people accrued holiday during the furlough. I think the answer to that is yes.
So that's one we're not completely sure on. We've had no guidance. We've had no guidance from our legal body, from our professional body at all. I can see yes and no. So it's one of those things I'm not completely sure on. Certainly, previously I've kind of done sabbatical provisions whereby, you know, somebody's wanted to go off and travel the world for 6 months, and you technically suspend the employment contract, so it's still in place, but it ceases to accrue any benefits. So if we're looking at furlough being similar to that, which obviously we don't know because it wasn't a term used in the UK, we could be looking at suspension of accrual of bits and pieces. There are others that I've seen that say, well, actually holiday would continue to accrue in the same way, you know, if you look at the similarities with, say, maternity leave. So I think that's one of those things just to watch this space. And obviously, as we get any updates, we'll let people know.
Yeah, I thought I'd read it that they were on full rights during that period. So
I've read both. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult one because we have no legal position on this. We've obviously kind of got the government, which hasn't mentioned it, but very much on the bits that they do refer to within the guide, it makes default provision to kind of law. So it talks about collective consultation, equality, and so on. So I don't think they're looking to challenge the legal status of the situation. We just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, because obviously there is a thing that, you know, potentially you're going to have 3 weeks off paid, and then we come out of this, and then, you know, June, July, August, they take another 2 weeks holiday while you're trying to ramp up. So is that something we could build into that letter to start with, to sort of
potentially
say, look,
once we've got some clarity, and I think, to be honest,
going to do this, then I think
we'll have some clarity within the week. I don't think it's going to be a long-term situation. The interesting thing is we're seeing with lots of employers that employees are requesting to cancel their holiday whilst they're furloughed, and they obviously want to have that as provision back, and that's quite a common one. As long as they give reasonable notice provision, I'd say that's not unreasonable for the employee to request that. And I
suppose you could, you know, in this negotiation, you could say, look, we'll furlough you, but you've got to take 2 weeks holiday. Take some of your holiday now and then furlough you as part of that package. So just so you avoid this 3 weeks off and then, you know, another 3 weeks off in the summer.
Yeah.
Not that anyone can go anywhere still, but
no, exactly.
So do we need to specify the furlough period, or can it be until further notice?
Certainly you could do until on further notice, but I put an end date of the 1st of June, which we know is the current provision. So it could be that you reserve the right to bring them off of furlough with say 24 hours notice or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's in your template. Was that date was in there, wasn't it? So if for anyone that wants the furlough letter templates, they're in the WhatsApp group under documents. So you have to click on the heading, and then there's a subsection there with all the documents. So we're trying to save as much of the useful information for you to download at a later stage. I did see Paul's. Is that a thumbs up, Paul, or a you want to talk? As a thumbs up. Okay, cool. So can we furlough gradually as work tails off? Pam, can you just give us a bit more info? What do you mean by gradually on that?
Hi. Well, you know, we do property maintenance, and to date we've been able to carry on work on unmanned open air sites. So we've already furloughed some of the engineers, but some have been working. But now one of our clients has now closed all their sites, so that's stopping as of today. So we'll be wanting to furlough some now. And we envisage that we'll probably next week only be doing emergency call outs for some of our essential suppliers that we work for. Sorry, whatever the terminology is.
So are you saying that, yeah, as of today, you'd furlough 3 people, and then mid next week you'd furlough another 3 people, and then the week after another 3 people?
Well, I don't know exactly, but could be, yes.
In that sort of, yeah, I think that's you know,
Fine.
at that stage, that's fine. That's what it's designed for.
I think the important bit is you just keep your audit trail as to why you've selected the individuals in that order.
Yeah, because it's, I mean, one trade's already got the work. We've had no emergency decorating work, so
yeah, so that's nice and logical. It's a group you can isolate, and you can say, well, actually,
we've already furloughed the decorators.
Yeah.
We furloughed the decorators. So, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think that's fine. So from Rebecca, I believe people accrued holiday during furlough. We talked about that one. Can we pay them rather than accruing holidays? We're going to ask 20 people to take furlough, and we don't want everyone to be coming back and taking holiday in June, July. Or I think to me those are 2 different things.
Yeah. If you're asking the question, can you pay them in lieu of their holiday? Then no, you can't, because that's a working time question. Holiday pay the only times you can pay holiday pay is for a leaver or somebody coming back from maternity leave.
Yeah.
So you have no option. The holiday, weirdly, is actually a piece of health and safety legislation under the working time regulations. So you have to keep them.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that there's nothing in that you can't stop people taking holiday in July, August now. No.
Not unless you've got something in your contract. I mean, that's I suppose the lesson learned from our clients and people we potentially want to do business with is it's about having the foreseeable future around. You want to cover yourself for as many eventualities. So, you know, if summer period's a really important thing, then you want a restriction that allows only so many people to have holiday. You can turn holiday requests down. That you are allowed to do that. You know, you don't need any provision in your contract. You need some grounds for why you're going to do that, and it needs to be reasonable. And again, everything we work for in employment law works on reasonable. Yeah. What's reasonable to one employer might be different to another.
So if you know, somebody's got let's say 3 weeks holiday booked in June that they had, you know, booked before we went into this, we now go into three weeks of furlough, and then they come out and then in effect they've got 3 weeks holiday. What would our rights be there to perhaps get them to move that holiday?
You've given consent, so you'd have to be really careful, because if you then did something without their agreement, obviously if you get people's agreement it's a different matter, but if you did it without their agreement, then potentially and ultimately if they're 2 years service, you could be looking at constructive dismissal. Yeah, you've got a breach of contract. You know, we're talking in the extreme. We just don't know how people's emotions. Everybody's obviously running a little bit high at the moment, so you're going to have more sensitivity.
I think, you know, in the situation, if you see that coming, I would say talk to people now while emotions are quite high and people are just thankful for a job. When we come out of this and it starts to calm down, they're going to be a lot more bullish, so they might stand their ground a bit more. So I would, if you've got impending holidays coming up between July and August, and you feel that actually you've got 3 weeks off here and I need you back in to be really driving this forwards, then have those conversations now to avoid a problem later on. So those who pay themselves a salary and dividends through their own company who are placed on furlough, are they allowed to still pay themselves dividends also? Yes. Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the plus side of the downside. Obviously, if you pay salary, low salary and high dividends, is the furlough will only be on the salary element of this. But yeah, there's nothing to stop you actually taking dividends out as normal. If you're furloughed, it's an investment income. Yeah, you can do that. So and good on you if you're making profit in the next few months to be able to do that. So yeah, operator view, that's fine.
Yeah, just to get my point, it's all right, it's fine.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So can an employee be made to take their annual leave if they are not able to be furloughed? think we answer that one. Can they be made to take their leave?
Depends on what's in your employment contract.
Yeah.
People always laugh at my statement, but you know, if you when you get somebody, if you put in your contract of employment, see somebody needs to run around your car park naked 50 times before they start their shift, and they sign that document, then they only do it 48 times, then they're in breach of contract. So whatever you get in your contract up front should be bulletproof, and hopefully that's why, you know, we always say that you should get a professional to look at them rather than doing it yourself, because if you do it, you probably won't need to change the document again for another 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. And do you have many contracts with run naked around the car park in them, Steph?
You'd be surprised with a few. My team always refuse.
So a suggestion is to ask everyone to take 2 weeks furlough and 1 week's holiday. It's not 2 weeks first, it's 3 weeks of furlough. And I put that might just be a typo, and 1 week's holiday. I think this what I was sort of suggesting there was more when we're talking to the guys is to actually say, look, you know, if we are going to be off, if you have got you've got holiday, let's put some of the holiday towards this period of absence, and then we can furlough you after it. But what we're saying with Steph is treat each case individually, you know, and you know, I would say seek advice on each one. You know, and anything that put yourselves into the employee's shoes and go, if you feel a little bit, oh, that might be a bit unsure, then be careful with it. You know, so you know, talk to Steph, talk to me, you know, talk to your HR, whoever's your advisor on this. You know, we're trying to give you the general ideas on this, rather than saying, you know, do exactly what these are. This is furlough. So it didn't exist until what, a week ago.
Friday, 5 o'clock.
You know, I somebody asked me and I googled it, and I thought, oh, I've been really clever here. I've got all this information and realised I was on an American site, because it doesn't actually exist in the UK.
I think, you know, there's 2 messages I'd send. If people agree to things, fantastic, because you've got their agreement, you can agree a contractual change. If you get that agreement in writing.
Yeah.
You know, what is going to be important 6 months down the line from this is that you've got that audit trail of documentation.
I think Claire's just put that up on the chat as well. It's really important. Everything, you know, everything you need, document it. You know, put it somewhere safe, because you know this is going to be a tough ride for the next few months. And trying to remember conversations and order of things, you just won't. So make sure you know, got that order.
Yeah, and we'd always use a comparison. You know, if you go into an employment tribunal and you're up for an unfair dismissal claim, most of this works on the principles of have you followed a fair decision, and the bit that employers sometimes struggle with is not about fairness. This is about have you got an audit trail that demonstrates you can do what you're entitled to do.
Yeah. So would it be acceptable to move a sales team to management so that the director could furlough, as the director has children, needs to be at home, and the head of sales has no children and could step and stay employed? So this is, I suppose it's back to the discussion we were having earlier, is could the director just sort of say, look, you know, I'll furlough myself, and the team then runs the business in their absence? I think legally there's nothing to stop that.
I think so. And obviously you can't waive your right as a director. They sit with you whether you're getting paid for it or not.
So if they mess up, it's still down to you. The only worry I would have is, would you have no contact with that business at all for 3 weeks or 4 weeks? And if you're comfortable with that, if you think, yeah, I can just leave them to it, yeah, and beyond the odd phone call, you know, once a week or so. But if you're doing emails, if you're checking bank statements, you know, if you're going into the account system, then I think you're pushing the boundaries of what furlough is about, personally.
Well, you end up doing what I've done and bribed mine with sweets upstairs.
So bribed your
kids with sweets, not to interrupt me.
I bribed your kids with sweets, yeah.
Yeah.
Can the furlough agreement include a clause for a period when no holiday would be allowed, agreed after return to work from trading? Yes, I think that's what we said, is you can put that into that, but you can't cancel holiday that's already been approved. If you've approved it, then it's like you know, you're going against your contract with that. Cool. Okay. Oh, this is more. But they can cancel if they want to.
Sorry, what I meant was, I think it was asked earlier, which is, we had a raft of people saying, I want to cancel my holiday now because they can't use it for the purpose they intended it to. I've seen a yeah, exactly. I've seen a draft from I think it's Simply Health saying they're not accepting any cancellations from staff because of this exact problem of not wanting a batch of holiday to come then rebookable after we go back to normality. So sorry, I just want to make sure I understand this, and I'm being a bit slow. We could do a furlough agreement that said when they come back, no holiday would be allowed. We could do that in advance.
I think you'd have to get their agreement to do it.
Yeah, but assuming that you had an agreement, yeah. So if you had an agreement to it, and you've already said obviously you don't have to approve a holiday request, but do you have to accept them saying I don't want to go on holiday now?
If you've already agreed it, then you've agreed it.
Yeah, that's fine if they've taken it. If they're taking it, so somebody who's
got it's a bit like somebody come back to you and say, I don't want to take holiday, then I want to change it to a different date. It's only if you agree to it.
Yeah, so you don't have to agree to it.
No, we don't.
Right, that's what I was. Yeah, and I think that's what Simply Health are getting at as well. With they got thousands of employees, they basically said we're not accepting those change requests.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the only bit I can see being a bit messy is somebody saying, well, I've got 2 weeks holiday booked for the first 2 weeks in April, or going away for Easter, but actually you furloughed me, so I'm taking holiday, and therefore I want full pay for that period. So it's going to go back to your record keeping. So we kind of need this to almost pan out a few more days to see what happens.
Once I get to this point, I think I might need some help, Steph, put it that way. I'm a bit slow. I'm a bit slow at the best of times.
The support is there. You know, don't go if you're really unsure with this. Don't do any of this without talking to somebody. You know, there are landmines you can land on, and for the sake of a phone call, you know, you'll save yourself a lot of grief afterwards. And Alan said an employee that's due to be leaving the business on the 10th of April, does this mean she is not eligible to be furloughed pay and have to pay it in full to the end of the notice period?
No, I think you can still furlough her as long as you can get the 3 weeks in. Can you just about get as long as you did it 3 weeks from your count back from the 10th of April? Yeah. Now,
if she's worked. Because the 10th is what, two weeks away, isn't it?
Yep.
So if she's worked a week and then furloughed 2 weeks, that wouldn't qualify for the 3 weeks. Again, if you had furloughed her from last week and don't pay her for this week, then potentially you could do that.
And then I want to just check I've got the question right, is if normally in notice periods, if you're giving notice to somebody, you have to put them back into full pay if they're not in full pay already. If somebody else is giving you full pay and they're working it, then normally you put them in full pay. So I guess if I've understood the question right, you could furlough her for the first 2 weeks in April and the end of March. So theoretically for those periods, she's resigned, so it's not a redundancy. So you could furlough her. And she's given you notice. The bit we don't know is whether you'd then be responsible for topping up that extra 20%. I think you may have to, but yeah, watch this space.
Again, I'd say that was a number crunching thing, and sit down. You know, she's got to approve it. So because she could say no. If she turned around and said no, I don't agree with this, then you'd have to pay her to the 10th.
Yeah.
Because you can't make her redundant because she's handed a notice in. So if she's better off through the furlough, then she may well be open to doing a furlough, and she's better off personally. If she's not better off personally, I'd be advising her not to do it, and you know, you'd have to pay her to the 10th. So,
and to be honest, you know, I guess you'd be processing this. It depends on whether you approach processing in March's payroll or April's payroll. If you can delay it until processing in April's payroll, then that's going to help people sort of a bit more clarity on the situation.
yeah. And if you furlough someone and they leave before the 3 weeks are up, will the HMSE claw back the 80%? So if they resign in the 3 weeks furlough period, I can't see anybody would do that unless they went out and got an amazing new job that had to start within that 3 week period.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're in the verge of things that probably won't happen there, Matt. So I wouldn't worry about that one. I think, I mean, if you know that they're going to resign in the 3 weeks, then I think you've got problems with that person. You need to deal with that now rather than put them on furlough. But that might be a specific question. You need to get specific advice on that one, Matt. So, but if they do it,
yeah, it was aimed at the rationale behind it is we brought someone on who their sole purpose of joining the company and their interest in joining was the field work, and they can't do any at the moment. So we can't provide them with what they are interested in doing. So there is a potential there.
I guess the only thing is everybody else is in the same situation, so it's not like they could go somewhere else and get that field experience at the moment.
No,
I think you could say, look, you know, I'm gonna, if I furlough you, then you cannot go and work for somebody else while you're being furloughed. So in effect, your contract does not finish until that furlough period is finished. If you get a job and you start the day after the furlough period finishes, then that's okay. You know, you could leave at that point, in which case you haven't lost from the deal, because they are technically still employed by you and therefore still under your contract and still have to give you notice. So I think the notice period would cover you on that one.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that right, Matt? Cool. Okay. I'm conscious of time. We've got a couple of minutes. We've as I thought we would do. It was predominantly going to be on furlough today. I put up on the screen for those that for the recording and those who can't see it, was really about, should we look at reduced hours or furlough? So in effect, because we did have an issue on the WhatsApp group of somebody had furloughed 90% of the staff. The people that had stayed and were working were getting a bit aggrieved that everyone else was off getting paid money for sitting at home and they had to come to work, and that was causing a bit of bad feeling with those people that were working. So one of the calculations that is definitely worth doing before you go into this, if it's large numbers you're doing, is to sit down with their salaries and say, look, if everybody took a 20% pay cut for the next months, and work out how much you would save by doing that against furloughing one or two people. Okay, so it very much depends on the size of your workforce and what you can do, but you can do the numbers. And if you put that to the team and say, look, guys, one or two of you can sit at home, do nothing when everyone else works, or we can all be in this together and take a bit of a hit across the board while we actually get ourselves back on our feet and move forwards. So, don't think that furlough really, what I'm reading is a last option thing, before redundancy. So really think about other ways to mitigate the cost to you and maintain sort of team morale while you're actually doing that. Would that fit with you as well, Steph?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you have to remember how far we've come in a week. I think we're going to get lots of information on furlough over the next 2 weeks with a lot of kind of clarity around holidays, the contractual provisions, those sorts of things. We'll carry on feeding them through, but we've gone through a massive change curve in like a week. And there's obviously some tail end questions. Certainly, the intention is we were talking to people before the announcement last Friday about reducing hours and redundancies, and now nearly all of those are converted to furlough instead where possible, certainly not a reduction in hours, but But hopefully the intention is that it's going to stop people being made redundant.
Yeah. And look, I think one of the things I just want to leave you guys with is, say this has come through in a week. Just imagine if we were trying to do what we're doing without this. This has opened up a whole new way for us to survive the next month or so and make this pain a little bit easier. A lot of us would be looking at actually making proper redundancies and then having the full redundancy costs and the processes, or having to carry this cost of employees over the next 4 weeks. So for all of its inadequacies and certain specifics, we've got to remember, this really is a game changer for all of us, and really allows us to stay in the game, and so use it on that basis. There will be people that will try and abuse it. Live to your morals and your values. Seek advice when you need it. And but if there are any questions, please use the WhatsApp group. That's what it's there for. I know for me, I'm gonna. I've got 9 till 10 every morning for the next few weeks, and 5 till 6. I'll be on Zoom. If anybody wants to just talk about things specifically, they can do that. Steph, how would they contact you?
My mobile number is available on the WhatsApp group. Happy to post it again, or it's steph@purehumanresources.co.uk.
Yeah. Or just do a personal message
WhatsApp
to either of us through WhatsApp, and we'll do our best to answer any questions. And if you do see business owners out there that are worried about this, please point them to that WhatsApp group. Get them on there, because the more people we can support over the next month, the better. And so we're not going to have time to go into the morale thing. I might do that one as another one of these. I'm trying to do one of these a week now. I think it seems to be working. Next week, I'm working with Dan Gateshill, who's a finance guy, looking at all the intricacies of using the guarantee scheme and what's going on within finance. So how do we actually get the finance from the banks and various other sources? Hopefully we'll know a bit more by then. So again, it'll be 4 o'clock next Friday. We're planning for that, and I'll be posting that through the WhatsApp group again. So really thanks very much for your participation, guys. It really makes a real difference when you get some good questions. And have a super weekend. Try and enjoy yourself walking around your gardens, and we'll catch up with you next week. So from Steph and I, thanks very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Steph.
That's all right.
See you later. I don't know how to switch this darn thing off. Can't find the
Bye all.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.